Blackhawks fans, welcome back to the Four Feathers podcast. It has been a hot minute, but it feels so good to be back talking Blackhawks hockey with each and every one of you. I'm Ron Luce, GM Ron, joined by Mr. Tony Marchese. Tony, it's been a hot minute. We got to enjoy some Olympic hockey. We're going to talk a little bit about that here tonight. And the Blackhawks are almost back this week with a game on Thursday. Before we get to all that, how are you doing, my friend? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Ronald. It feels like it's been about 84 years since the Blackhawks played hockey, and we talked on these airwaves. But doing well, and Ron, this is probably the most I've enjoyed the Olympics in my lifetime, and obviously a Team USA win to help that along. But I enjoyed the Olympic break. I think it was good. I tuned into some curling, some ski jumping, some Olympic hockey. It was good,
Oh, yeah.
good television watching there for a couple of weeks. I'm actually kind of sad it's over.
Yeah, you forget how much you enjoyed the Olympics, right? Because it is a one in every 4 years type thing, at least for the Winter Olympics, of course. So, you sit back and you're like, man, what's going on? What's this? What's that? And then, yeah, of course, the time comes, and then you realize, man, I'm gonna miss this. This was fun. This was exciting. I agree with you, Tom. Caught some of the other events, a little bit of curling, a little bit of the figure skating as well. And then, of course, plenty of Olympic hockey on both sides, both men's and women's, with the U.S. making a clean sweep in hockey. First time ever, because last time U.S. won gold, the women weren't playing at the Olympics yet. So quite the historic year for USA in the sport of hockey. And as our good friend Kirk Zappa says, what's up, dudes? Hashtag crack 'em. Hello. What's up? We appreciate you tuning in with us here as we get ready to welcome back Blackhawks hockey. But Tony, before we get to the Blackhawks, we have to talk about the Olympics. We have to talk about Team USA. Like we said, the ladies took care of business. Incredible stuff. Megan Keller with the game-winning goal. So both games also had a golden goal as well, which was pretty cool to see when it was all said and done. Canada was holding on to a 1-0 lead for the ladies. They pull the goaltender with the sixth attacker, Hillary Knight, pots her 15th Olympic goal. That's so impressive. And of course, the ladies take home victory then in overtime, 2-1. And then the men do the same thing, 2-1 in overtime over Canada. This time, however, the U.S. opened the scoring. It was the Minnesota Wild's Matthew Boldy on a really nice individual effort to ultimately beat Jordan Binnington. And then, of course, the nice Cale Makar snipe tied things up before Jack Hughes with the golden goal in overtime. And his brother Quinn almost ended it too. If he's able to elevate that puck just a bit more, Jordan Binnington made a hell of a save just to get a piece of it and keep it out of the net to keep overtime going just a little bit longer before Jack was able to end the game. I'm telling you, Tone, this, to your point, was such a fun Olympics to watch. I think, the amount of overtime games that there were in this Olympics, there was a lot of drama at various times. Look at the semifinals, especially for Canada. It looked like Finland was going to take care of them early, and they had to storm back and even give themselves a chance. It's hard to find a better, I think, a set of Olympic Games. I think we have to go all the way back to 2010 when the U.S. and Canada last met in the gold medal game, and we obviously recall Sidney Crosby's golden goal from that one. But that was probably the last time that I think, at least in the U.S., where the gold medal game had that much angst, anxiety, excitement attached to it. And it always delivers when they're playing Canada for a gold medal.
Absolutely, Ron. I think you hit the nail on the head with this. It obviously means more when the U.S. is in the final game, going for a gold medal there. But the storylines in this Olympics were fantastic, and you laid a bunch of them out there. I was actually not surprised that Canada was able to storm back in that game. And, the U.S. had to take care of their own business against Sweden to even make it into the gold medal game themselves. Some overtime thrillers in that. I think the only thing that I'm somewhat disappointed in, and obviously you can't really change this because of the location of the games, I felt like it was a little bit of a disservice to have all of these things at the time that they were scheduled. The latest games would start around 1-2 o'clock.
Yeah, about 2 o'clock Central Time.
So and the gold medal game obviously starting at 7 a.m. here. Not exactly the easiest to wake up for on a Sunday morning and get ready to go. But it looked like all the bars were packed. People were having a good time early on their Sunday mornings, and the only thing I could argue with, man, would be just better timing for some of these games. But other than that, it was a special Olympics, and that's that goes out to all the U.S. players who made that as special as it was.
Indeed, and Tony, hockey aside as well, a historic Winter Olympics for the United States. Period. The most amount of medals ever in a Winter Olympics for the United States. The most gold medals. I believe they also had the most gold medals of anybody at the Olympics with 12. Only trailing Norway in total medals as well for this entire event. So again, just a historic Olympics in general for the United States, and I think that was really cool to see because you hear so much of political divide and world events and things that really I think sour people sometimes about the United States. It's hard not to get excited for your country though when it comes to the Olympics, and I think that's why the Olympics are so cool when it's all said and done. So incredible stuff. I will say, Tone, it was the first gold medal in 46 years, and I think the only thing that could have made it better was, of course, Johnny Gaudreau being there because he would have absolutely made the team.
Yes.
And Patrick Kane being a part of this team would have been really cool. And I saw a lot of other people saying that too. And again, this doesn't take away my personal excitement for watching US win gold. I was running around my house screaming at 8:30, almost 9 o'clock in the morning when Jack Hughes found the back of the net. But it would have been pretty cool to see number 88 because he probably would have wore the C as well. And that would have been pretty special to see for him to be a part of that team. But I'll tell you what, though, Tom, and I think Mike Tirico did a great job in his kind of, I'll call it almost eulogy of the Olympics at this point. His sign off, just displaying how, that team that lost in 2010 to Canada really did kind of inspire this generation. Right? The Zach Parises of the world, the Ryan Millers of the world, the Patrick Kanes of the world. Those players inspired this current group of U.S. born players, especially the young guys, right? Especially the Kachucks, the Hughes brothers, a fair amount of that blue line for the U.S. because it was a fairly young blue line, right? Really, maybe outside of like JT Miller because he was kind of starting to sniff around the NHL by that point, come, probably closer to that 2014 Olympics then, of course, where TJ Oshie was immaculate in the shootout against, of course, the technical title, the Olympic athletes of Russia. Man, it was, it's cool to know that like that group had something to do with it. And it's also super cool when you hear these guys do the kind of the off to the side stuff in preparations for the Olympics and they ask them all the questions and it's, who was your favorite American-born player? Almost universally, it's Patrick Kane. And that's really cool to see because as a Hawks fan, like you sit here and you go, wow, these guys were watching that run with us, right? As Hawks fans, even just from afar as hockey fans because of what Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane and Duncan Keith. Quinn Hughes' favorite player growing up was Duncan Keith. He even said it. And he was like, well, but if I have to pick an American, it's Patrick Kane. Blackhawk after Blackhawk after Blackhawk. So that, again, just something that I take away, I think, from it, too, for this Olympics. And it almost makes it mean a little bit more because it's, the Chicago Blackhawks helping inspire a next generation. And then this group that just won the gold medal is going to inspire, hopefully, that next generation of potentially gold medal winning hockey players for the United States.
One can hope. And I think that, obviously there's always a boom in that sport when your team does well and an international competition. And I think, they talked about, how this next crop in 15, 20 years is going to be largely inspired by some of these guys. And, you're going to get a different version of the Jack Hughes and the a different version of a JT Miller, and it's just, I think it's super important for just hockey in the United States of America and for
Yeah.
U.S. hockey in general to keep that pipeline strong. And I think that this team captured and inspired a lot of people. And you know, hey, we'll see if it if that American success continues. Obviously, they're going to have to do it again, and I'm sure we're going to have another Four Nations face off soon. Or I'm not exactly positive what the plan is for next year's All Star break or lack thereof in the NHL, Ron. But I've enjoyed the last 2 years of watching international play at this juncture of the schedule.
Yeah, Tone, don't know what's coming in 2027, but we do know that in 2028 there will be the World Cup of Hockey. So that is something to look forward to. I think, the NHL kind of taking a page out of Major League Baseball's playbook and their World Baseball Classic that's also coming up here in literally about, a week to 10 days
Yep.
where the games will begin for that. So again, just more international competition in some of the major sports here in the U.S. So that'll be fun to watch. Tony, just a couple of quick small notes, and thank you, Blackhawks Cowboy, for the clarification here. He says next year it is just the
Oh,
All-Star game. So, but again, 2028, mark it on your calendars. World Cup of Hockey is back. So there will be international competition once again featuring NHL players. Tony, I have a couple other little notes here, just really quick, that I want to share with you. One being this tweet resurfaced during or right after the US won gold. And it was from Craig Custance, and it was dated January 24th, 2011. And he says, "Look out 2026 Olympics." And it was the old school retweet because it said USA Hockey. It was their tweet. USA Hockey's 8 and under membership has reached 100,000 for the first time ever. Talk about some foreshadowing if I've
wow.
ever seen it. That's pretty freaking cool. Secondly, did you see the gentleman at Harry's Tap Room in Ambler near Philadelphia do the Herb Brooks speech on the
I
bar?
I did. I thought that was
Electric.
absolutely, yes, it was absolutely electric. Just up there on the bar. I think that was right before the overtime period
Yeah,
started. He was up there. Man, he looked and sounded pretty good. I will say
really
he put
did.
a lot of effort into that, and I'm sure he prepared for that one quite a few times.
It was electric. It was absolutely electric. I'll tell you what, though, Tone. In complete fairness to him, pretty much the 2 to 3 days leading up to that game, I think I rewatched that speech about 50 times. So I'm sure that he was in the same boat and said, you know what? We're gonna have some fun with this one. And to your point, looked great, looked exactly like the late Herb Brooks. And I think he would have made him proud. Tony, I hate to do this, but sometimes Four Feathers has to be negative. One negative note, and this isn't a shot at the Olympics, the USA, anything of that nature. Rather, it's the people that make the jerseys for Team USA, and that's Nike. There are no jerseys to be bought anywhere for this year's Olympic team. They have some t-shirts. They've got the hoodies that look like the jerseys on the USA website. But holy shit, they don't have a single jersey anywhere on any of these websites that people can buy. If you want jerseys, you pretty much got to go on eBay and get ones that are not going to be official or what have you that featured this year's crop of players. That's a major miss by Nike. And the reason being, Tone, according to the Athletic article that reported this, is because they assumed Canada would win gold. And that's really disappointing. So Nike, a lack of stick taps in this one, Tone, because that is just the ultimate, I don't even know, ultimate just folly, ultimate just disappointment, ultimate miss, whatever word you want to use or term you want to use. This is bad on Nike's part.
Oh, it's horrible. I can't believe that this would have, because they thought that Canada was going to win. Did fans of their own team, like I'm sure that there's some Matthew Kachuk fans in Florida that want a Matthew Tkachuk USA jersey just to add to their collection. That's not acceptable. And we've had a lot of different things with, I mean, the Super Bowl was one of them with the jerseys, the Fanatics mess up. Now you've got
Yes.
this. Can we get it together? Can we figure it
Seriously.
out? We got to figure it out.
Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have apparel anywhere close to what it used to be. I get that like the price of goods is increasing, but come on. Do right by the fans. Otherwise, people are going to stop buying your product and are going to get really pissed off. I know I am. I'm genuinely bummed because I think it would be really cool to have a Jack Hughes USA jersey for the foreseeable future, because that's going to be like a Mikey Rosioni jersey for the 1980 team, right? Like, or a Jim Craig or one of those guys. I will say, Tony, one funny note, because my wife Katie and I were talking about this during the game. There are a fairly large amount of USA players that either recently played or currently play for Canadian teams in the NHL. Austin Matthews playing in Toronto, Connor Hellebuck playing in Winnipeg, Quinn Hughes up until about what, 2 months ago was in Vancouver, and Brady Tkachuk is in Ottawa.
Yep.
How crazy is that? Some of the biggest stars on Team USA don't even play in the United States in the NHL. So hilarious, because I mean, those jerseys, I'm sure people would still like, I would buy a Brady Tkachuk USA jersey. I love Brady Tkachuk. I hope he's a Blackhawk someday. I'd buy a Connor Hellebuck jersey. I know he's a Winnipeg Jet and they're a division rival of the Blackhawks, but I love Connor Hellebuck. I think he's incredible and son of a bitch. I mean, he was the player of the game for the gold medal game. I mean, they don't win that game without him literally standing on his head and having that performance. So nonetheless, again, hate to end it on a little bit of a sour note there, but just something to keep in mind. One quick one here from Anthony Tony. He says, Canada was crying about the 3v3 overtime, but failed to score during regulation when they had a 5-on-3. Yeah, that was a huge 5-on-3 kill by the U.S. A clinic, if I do say so myself. And
penalty kill of a lifetime.
It really was. It really was. And hey, you know what? They could have used a player who was really good in space in 3-on-3 that could score goals, and they left him at home and let him heal in Chicago, which I'm thankful for, because I'm glad he was able to heal. But maybe Canada will learn their lesson next time and put better players on their roster than some of the guys they had playing piss poor minutes toward.
Do you lend any credence to the online rumors that were circulating about Connor Bedard not being part of the Canadian team because Sidney Crosby lobbied against him being there? Did you see that? I think we talked about that in our Blackhawks writers room.
We did, and you know, I think back to that and I say I think that's total crap. What I will say though is I think Canada knew how the US was going to build their team. Players like JT Miller, Vincent Trocheck coming, you know, guys that are going to be penalty killers and bring a physical presence. The Tkachuk brothers, of course, are physical as hell. Like, the U.S. built a very physical team, and I think Canada tried to match that. And that's why the likes of Sam Bennett, that's why the likes of, you know, some of these guys that Anthony Cirelli, before he got hurt, were going to go to the Olympics, is because they tried to match up with the U.S. a little bit better. And I think there's something to be said for that, right? But I really, you know, I really sit back and I go, you know, I still think like he and Schaefer should have made the team over at least two of the players they took. You know what I mean? So, but it's neither here nor there. I like Kirk's mindset here. He says it's still Bedard over Celebrini. And then Blackhawks Cowboy, our good friend here, says Crosby, no. Armstrong, yes. Great point. Bedard was never making that team. No, but I think he will in 4 years. And it would be a shock if he wasn't. If that was the case, I think there would be Canadians that would be like calling for Doug Armstrong's head when it was all said and done. Anthony Tony asks, was the USA 100% on the PK? Yes, they were. Also, fun fact, the women were also 100% of the PK for the whole tournament. So both US teams were 100% on the penalty kill in this tournament. Pretty freaking impressive, if I do say so myself. Tony, to wrap up our Olympic discussion here as we push forward, just some Olympic break updates from some of the Blackhawks organization personnel that were at the Olympics. Teuvo Teravainen for Finland. They lost to Canada in the semis. We touched on that very briefly, but they ultimately claimed the bronze medal with a convincing win over Slovakia in the bronze medal game. So congratulations to Tavo. I mean, you still medal at the Olympics. That's still a big deal. Um, and I'm sure Tavo's pretty happy coming back to Chicago. I believe they said he'll rejoin the team for practice on Wednesday of this week, and then he's expected to play on Thursday. So quite the quick turnaround for Tavo Teravainen following this Olympic Games. Adam Guyon for Czechia, he did not appear in the Olympics at all. Czechia ultimately lost in the quarterfinals in OT to Canada. And then Anders Sorensen for Team Sweden. They lost to the USA in overtime in the quarterfinals. And that was that Quinn Hughes GWG and OT that ultimately sent Sweden home in the tournament. So Sorensen has already been spotted back with the Blackhawks. Obviously, Guyon's going to return to college. And then we already said when Teravainen will return. Tony, anything you want to add to that, or we want to keep this thing moving?
Keep it moving.
Let's keep it moving. Let's shift our focus to our beloved Blackhawks because they do play a hockey game this week. Blackhawks are back in action on Thursday against the Nashville Predators that will be down at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, right on the end of Broadway, over pretty close to Tootsie's. There's a lot of talks already about storylines, Tone, for these last 25 games of the NHL season. And I think that's something that we should talk about here because I think these are things that people need to be on the lookout for. And I've got some listed on our rundown that we're going to touch on here. But if you think of any, sir, as well, please just interject and maybe our conversation might spur up a few more. But the first one that I really do want to chat on is Connor Bedard's return to the faceoff dot. And here's why. I fully believe that he's going to look like the Connor Bedard we saw earlier in the season. And I know we kind of addressed this on past shows, Tone, saying like, yeah, you know, it's kind of hard when you're not taking the face off as a center, and then you got to try to like get to your center positioning, or you might still be the wing. And he even talked about that kind of publicly with Ryan Green and how they communicated that. I think that kind of messed with his game a little bit at times, because I firmly believe Connor Bedard is just, he thrives most when he's up and down the middle of the ice and playing the center position. So I don't know about you. I am over the moon at the fact that he's healthy enough to come back and take draws. I really do think we're going to start to see the Connor Bedard of that hot streak before the ultimate injury that set him out for a little bit there against St. Louis way back when in December.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that this sort of opens his game up a bit, Ron, and I think you're thinking the same thing. Just being able to focus instead of having to just constantly shift back over and sort of take the center duties, but play as a wing. And it clarifies, I think, the Blackhawks offensive structure a little bit better than what we've been watching in the stretch leading up to the Olympic break. The interesting thing will be the ramifications up and down the lineup of him doing so, because I really enjoyed Oliver Moore at the center position, and I believe he's going to be shifting back over to a wing now. At least that's what it looks like from camp, as Nazar and Bedard will kind of split from each other. I did enjoy the offensive dynamic of having a higher, I shouldn't say higher talented, but I guess a little more firepower next to Connor Bedard. We'll see what the if there's any negative takeaway from there, but I think getting him back to the center position simplifies his game for him, and that'll allow him to open up a little bit more around.
Indeed, and you know what, Tone? I will argue this. Was Frank Nazar really that much extra firepower, at least on the score sheet? Because
it didn't seem to translate as much as I thought it would. But you know,
and I think, and here's what I think about that too. I think
it looks good on paper. We'll put it that way.
Sure, absolutely. It's definitely the sexy name on paper. And Bertuzzi looked very good with that line. I think they had a lot of good chemistry. It just didn't translate to a lot of goals on the stat sheet, unfortunately. But they had great chances. I think back to that Columbus game, they had a lot of really good chances. Of course, the only 2 goals they scored in that game come from Bedard and Nazar. But I think Nazar had kind of maybe a little bit the same issue as Bedard, where, you know, he's dealing with pain in his jaw coming back. He was wearing the bubble. No bubble anymore for Nazar, though. That's encouraging news as well as a part of this break. But then he's also got to go from taking the draw to then playing wing, which is not his natural position. So I think that kind of impacted him a little bit as well. You know, I agree. I think I'm going to be a little disappointed that Oliver Moore is returning to his position on the wing. But I will say this, he was really hot at center there for a little while, and then it kind of faded. And I think it's okay for him to kind of go back to wing now. I think ultimately in the future, if the Blackhawks have it their way, Oliver Moore's your third line center, and you're in a really good spot with those three up and down your lineup. But I think right now they need the firepower on the wings with those guys, and that's why you're going to see Oliver Moore playing the wing. And and I'm okay with that. Hopefully, he and Frank Nazar, if they play together, can rekindle some chemistry. Again, your two top setters in Bedard and Nazar are now fully healthy, or at least as healthy as they're going to be without having a summer off to fully recover. And I think that's incredibly encouraging for, again, just growth down the stretch here for this Blackhawks team. Tony, another storyline here to watch, of course, is the NHL trade deadline. And it's no secret, right? Just, the NHL trade deadline's coming up. And we know the Blackhawks are going to be active. They're going to be selling players. I don't think it's going to be as much or as many as it's been in years past. And the reasoning is different. Both Scott Powers and Ben Pope have written some really nice articles kind of explaining this a little bit in depth. And it's that they want to clear up space for some of these guys that are getting ready to graduate to the NHL, right? They want to see Nick Lardis down the stretch playing in this forward group. They want to be able to see, hopefully, Anton Frondel join this team at some point before the season concludes. And potentially, maybe the most fascinating name. So I'll save it until we get to that next point. But they want to clear space for these young guys. And that's where, that's why Connor Murphy's name has been thrown around. As Anthony Tony says here, he hopes Connor Murphy goes to a team that wins the cup. I agree. I think it'd be awesome to see Connor Murphy go somewhere and have a lot of success. I think Jason Dickinson is absolutely getting moved. After that, it's a lot of question marks. You've seen a lot of people say they'd be kind of shocked if it's anybody else. If you can get something from Matt Grzelcyk, I think they do it, but I don't know what his value is going to be as a left-handed defenseman on this market. Right-handed D and center are always premier positions at the trade deadline, and the Hawks have that in the form of Dickinson and Murphy. So it essentially feels like those two are guarantees. Mikheyev is a maybe. Obviously, we've heard the rumors about them having hopes of potentially extending him. It'll be interesting to see kind of what the return is for these guys. Because again, at this point, the Blackhawks are really just trying to clear space for young guys down the stretch here, rather than, we need to sell these pieces because we need more future assets. Don't get me wrong. I think they'll be excited about those assets. But again, reasoning being a little different than years past.
Yep.
So
agreed. And I don't think that there's really any other names out there that I would add to this. Maybe that someone takes a flyer on a veteran that isn't on this list, and they pay a steeper price on it. I'd be surprised, though. I'd be shocked to see. Really,
I would also be surprised,
a ton
especially because the Hawks are going to need the likes of Burakovsky and Donato and Bertuzzi and Teravainen to get to the floor next season for the salary cap,
right?
Because it's going to be such a young roster. That's going to be something to keep in mind too, as this comes through. And Tony, some of the other names that we talked about, we already mentioned Lardis and Frondel, but really it's kind of I call them the young 3 on D is really the kind of where the focus is going to be the rest of the season. And I think that's why a lot of people hope that Matt Grzelcyk can potentially get moved at this deadline as well. Let him go to a contender. Even if he's your 7th defenseman on a contending team, I'm sure he'd be happy to be playing playoff hockey this season rather than ending his season, most likely in mid-April with the Blackhawks. But that would also allow the Blackhawks then to play the likes of Kevin Korchinski, Sam Renzel, and Artem Levshinov on a pretty regular basis. And I think that's what the hope is here for the remainder of the season. Levshinov, because he just needs to work through what he needs to work through at this point. He's shown he can play at the NHL level, just needs more minutes, more time. He's going to make mistakes. Renzel, I think he looked like a different player in his brief stint back up with the team before being sent back down before the Olympic break. But the guy with the most is Kevin Korchinski, because a very important note, and I didn't realize this until I read Ben Pope's article, or pardon me, I believe this was Scott Powers' article with The Athletic. He's out of options to Rockford starting next season. So he'd have to clear waivers, and there ain't no way in hell the Hawks are going to put him on waivers. So he needs to show that, hey, I can at least hold my own, and I deserve to start in the NHL next season because I've improved and because I've taken what you guys have told me to work on and applied it in Rockford and now can bring it to the NHL level. So I'm the most excited to see Korchinski. I think just because we haven't seen as much of him so far this season. But I think Levshinov and Rinzel's development and growth is just as fascinating of a storyline for the rest of the year.
Agreed. I think that Levshinov is the name that I'm looking at here the most, Ron, because I'm a little disappointed in what we've seen in the development of Artie Levshinov, and I think that hopefully there's been some sort of reset through this break, a mental reset, and then sort of a game reset as well.
Sure.
They've had their Artem Levshinov development camps taking place around the practice rinks, and they're working on stuff with him. Let's just hope something translates here soon, Ron, because he was probably one of the more frustrating players to watch on this roster as the Olympic break was approaching, which ultimately led to his benching.
Yes, definitely. And I think there was certainly an element of that was just being physically gassed. I think that was a lot of this team, truthfully, when it got down to at the end of the I guess we'll call it like the first half of the season before the Olympic break. But to your point, Artem Levshinov, the mini camps around practice, and then during the break, he was down in Florida skating with a bunch of other NHL players that were kind of just working on things during the break and staying fresh. So hopefully, again, there's going to be mistakes. He's still an incredibly young defenseman in the NHL, but I agree with you, Tony. At least if you start to see some of that stuff translate, it'll put a little bit of a better taste, I think, in Blackhawks fans' mouths and in the front office's mouths too. Watching him grow a little bit as the season goes on, and then again, you have a full summer to continue working on stuff with him leading into the 26-27 season when it's all said and done. But Tony, more young names. We mentioned Frondell. We mentioned Lardis. Fascinating name I've seen thrown around a lot more than I was expecting is none other than Sasha Boisvert. Has had kind of a rough year at BU, as is just the whole team in general. BU is just having a really weird season as a program when it's all said and done. But he missed some time with injury. When he has been healthy and playing, he's looked really good. Like we've seen the flashes that we saw in his freshman campaign at North Dakota that put him on the map within this Blackhawk system. But a lot of the beat writers, Scott Powers, I've seen Ben Pope mention this a few times as well. It sounds like they anticipate Boisvert turning pro after his collegiate season is over. So there's a very good chance that we see at least a handful of games from Sasha Boisvert at the NHL level.
Yeah,
he's probably
the old cup of coffee.
Yeah, he's probably the most fascinating name, Tone, because admittedly, I think once he got hurt this season, I was fully expecting him to at least go back to BU for one more year. The fact that he's prepared to turn pro from everything, all accounts that it sounds like, he's going to be a really interesting one. I think we'll see him down in Rockford all of next season. I don't, unless there's horrific injuries and they need to call him up, kind of like Lardis this year. I think he's on the full, the full Rock Vegas development plan for 2026-27. But I'm really, really excited to see him a little bit here because I just don't firmly believe I didn't firmly believe that he would be ready to come out given the injury this year.
I did not have this name on my radar, and this is not a name that we were really talking about as potential to join this team at the end of the season. I would still probably go with Frondell as being the name that I want to see, and then obviously the one that won't be here this year, but probably next. Hopefully, Roman Kantsarov in that list as well. I would love to see if we get some Sasha here at the end of the season, Ronald. It's always good to wind the season down and get like that one or two college, just like it was last year when Oliver Moore and Sam Renzel and if you saw Slaggert the other year come up too. Like I love that time of year. We start to get to see what it might look like next year, and get that little taste of something new and exciting after a long hockey season. But we'll keep Sasha on the list maybe then.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I agree with you. I think Frondell, certainly from a anticipation standpoint, is the most exciting to see this year. I think from just a surprise standpoint, that's why I really am kind of keyed in on Boisvert. I love this comment from Lebowski. I hope it's true and correct in the long run. He says Boisvert will be a better pro than a college player. I really do think, North Dakota, he was with a great coach. And North Dakota got rid of that coach, which was a huge surprise to a lot of people. He had a great freshman season, was expecting to build on it, and then transferred because of that coach being let go. And, kind of like Blackhawks Cowboys says, he says he will likely NHL and then Rockford need to get him out of that BU environment. It seems like there's just a stank at BU this year, which is really, really just kind of odd to see. So we'll have to keep an eye on that when it's all said and done. And Anthony Tony says Kantarov is the most fascinating for him. Again, it'll be really cool to see Kantarov. It just sucks we have to wait till next year because his KHL deal doesn't expire till June 1st. So I would fully expect him to sign before the draft, which will be really exciting news for Blackhawks fans when it's all said and done. Because he's already their prospect, I think he could sign during like the Cup Finals, for example. I don't think there's any stipulations on that. But again, can't sign until after June 1st when his contract expires over in the KHL. And Anthony Tony follows up with another question. Will we see any junior players like Vanacker or Spalacy? We might see junior players in Rockford. So the key being here, they pretty much already passed their due to make the NHL because of the CHL NHL agreement with the age 20 rule. But those guys that will be age 20 come next year, kind of similar how we saw with Nick Lardis at the end of last season where he joined Rockford. I would fully expect at least Spalacy for sure. I would expect maybe Vanacker too, but there's a good chance those guys will join Rockford for what will hopefully be a Calder Cup push as well. I think that's a key thing to remember here is, Frondell, I think, will be allowed to play in the playoffs in the AHL as long as he doesn't see NHL time. So obviously that's indicative of how well his team does in the SHL playoffs. But it's going to be a loaded group down in Rockford too late in this season, I think, and that's going to make it a lot of fun as well to kind of keep tabs on the old Ice Piggies as the season winds downtown. Enough about the kids, though, really quick, because I got a couple honorable mentions here, Tone, and I want to kick around with you and then see if you've got anything else that we need to talk about here. The top pairing, I think, is something that Scott Powers brought up, and I found it fascinating because it wasn't in a negative sense. It's just a more consistency sense. These guys are like one of the top 15 pairings in the NHL in terms of minutes. They take a lot of defensive zone draws as well. I mean, they are relied on heavily by Jeff Blashill and company to be that shutdown pairing. And I think they've had some moments of brilliance throughout the course of the year. I think they just want more consistency from them down the stretch here. So I'm really excited to see what a Vlasic and a Crevier bring for the rest of the year because they've been really fun to watch, Tone.
I agree with you. I agree. Big Lou has really stepped up this year. Vlasic, I feel like we could get a little bit more out of, but they've played pretty damn good D for a top pairing, and you can't teach the size on that line either.
Tell me about it. I mean, there's a lot of collective human on that pairing. So they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. Tony, I know this one is going to find a special place in your heart, so I'll let you elaborate maybe a little bit more on it. But some goaltending consistency. Obviously, we saw the report, if you've read the article from Ben Pope during the break. Spencer Knight played the last two games of the first part of the season before the break sick, and he was like struggling to communicate and things like that. And maybe that's part of the reason why he didn't look as good, especially against Columbus, maybe not so much against San Jose. I'm really hoping we start to get early season Spencer Knight back. And again, this was a weird year, right? A lot of hockey in a short amount of time. You're playing a lot more than you expect to. He's still acclimating to be a starting goaltender. He's already exceeded his career high in NHL starts in a single season. I'm very, very, very excited though to watch Spencer Knight down the stretch here because and really even Arvid Soderblom as well, because I think these guys are going to be refreshed. They're going to be focused, and I think they could really return to some of that early season versions of themselves that we saw before this team started to lose some steam down the stretch.
Yeah, his next start is going to be his 40th start in net, Rod, and then the most games he ever played in a single season was back in 21-22, which was 32. So he's logged an incredible amount of minutes already. He's still playing very, very well. He's got a goal against average of 262. That's incredible right now. Save percentage is up at 908. He's having a better year this year than he played last year in his 15 starts statistically. So I'm pretty thrilled with what we've got out of Spencer Knight. The body of work itself, I think it's still, if we're grading it out right now, I'm probably going to give him a B plus, somewhere in that range. I think the goaltending consistency really needs to come from another name, and that would be Arvid Soderblom. I think it's going to be put up or shut up time for Arvid Soderblom as we come out of the break and wind this stretch down. You're going to need to get a little bit more. Going to need to get a little bit more out of Arvid Soderblom if he's going to be sticking around here, in my opinion, Ron. I don't know how you feel on that.
Yeah, I think, I think Soderblom's in a very interesting position because he's got one more year at a fairly respectable dollar value. I believe it's 275 as his cap hit going into next season. And Drew Commesso has ultimately, I mean, he looked pretty good. Obviously, that Capitals game was kind of unfair. He was kind of thrown into the fire unexpectedly because of the amount of illnesses impacting that goalie room. But he balled out and was spectacular in that shutout win over Nashville. Just the following game, he's gonna, I think, press, especially if he continues to play as well as he has down in Rockford. Going into next season, there's, I think, going to be a legitimate competition for that number 2 goalie spot, and I think that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. So, I agree. I think I'm ultimately thrilled though with what Spencer Knight has done. Anthony Tony asked, "What's Knight saves above expected?" It's still very high. I'm not poo-pooing on Spencer Knight, but if you've checked, he had what, I think it was like a 920 save percentage in the early part of the season, and I think it's over his last like 20 games, maybe not 20, I think it's 15. He has like an 895 save percentage, which is right around league average right now for this year. So again, and I think some of that is just being gassed, being acclimated to being a starter, a weird schedule because of the Olympics. He's still having a great season by all measures. If we as Blackhawks fans get to watch and observe the Spencer Knight of the early part of the season, the last 25 games are going to be a fuck ton of fun because he's going to be borderline untouchable in terms of in net. So very, very excited to see. And yeah, from Lebowski here, Drew Commesso has a shutout in 4 NHL starts already. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Some discussion of Boisvert sucks versus not sucking. Yeah, he had a great freshman year, 18 goals as an 18-year-old freshman. So again, I think, the talent is very much there with a guy like Sasha Boisvert. It's just a matter of sometimes they're not sexy. Everybody wants the sexy player, and sometimes the guy that's just stable and consistent isn't a bad thing when it's all said and done. But neither here nor there, Tony. The final one I have here, Tony, is draft odds in both favors. The Hawks are 10 games out of a playoff, or pardon me, 10 points out of a playoff spot, not games. But they're also 11 points out of the basement. It would place them right around about the 6th overall pick, 7th overall pick in this year's draft. And they have about, I think it's like a 15% chance to jump up into the top 2 as it stands today. The Florida pick, obviously, is a piece of that as well here, right? Will they be in the top 10 in terms of draft? And will that Blackhawks pick kick to next year? Which honestly, if it does kick to next year, that's a hell of a trade token potentially too, if this team wants to improve in the offseason. But then you also, if they're the 11th team, the Hawks got 2 top 15 picks, and that could be massive too as well in a really deep draft. So there's a lot to really keep an eye on here in these last 25 games in terms of the Hawks draft position, because it is a good draft, and they're going to have an opportunity to add 1 for sure and maybe 2 really good players in the first round. It's hard to ignore that storyline, Tony, in my opinion, especially when, everybody kind of knows that this team is still very much in the rebuild, but is kind of on that upward trajectory now. And I mean, you inject another, really good player or 2 into this farm system, and they're sitting really pretty going into next season in terms of young talent in the pipeline.
Yeah. I don't really have too much to add to that. I think we're going to have plenty of draft talk as this season winds down, Ron, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not the Florida pick comes our way this year. If that's a kicked can. We've had enough of that Florida pick. I just kind of want that to be put to bed at this point.
Yeah, I very much feel that as well. But still an important draft, though, Tony, as well. I would like to make note because it is a deeper draft. Hawks have 3 second-round picks this year. So that's going to be something incredibly important to keep an eye on. You know, we hear Kyle Davidson talk about those calculated
and
shots.
There could be more. There could be more picks coming.
Could be
in this draft as well
at
the trade deadline.
There's belief that Connor Murphy could maybe fetch a 2 and a 3, depending on how much of a bidding war teams get into. Maybe Dickinson gets you a 3 and a 4. Maybe some of those picks are in future years as well. So you continue to kind of load up the future cupboard. To your point, Tone, maybe that second round pick is this year. Now you got 4. And don't forget, Kyle Davidson loves trading second round picks to trade up into the back end of the first round. We've seen it, 3 years in a row now? Very, very plausible. That we'll have to wait and see where that's all said and done. So that'll be plenty to keep an eye on as well. Don't forget Carolina's number 1 for 2 of our number 2 picks. Yeah, and that was last year. You know, jumping back up into the first round using those 2 second-round picks. So again, we know Kyle Davidson is not afraid to move back up into the back end of the first round if the currency's there. And with 3 second-rounders in this year's draft, your own, which is going to be a high pick, and then the Islanders pick, and then I believe it's the Vancouver Canucks pick, which is also going to be a high pick. Maybe you just stay pat in a really deep draft like that, and then you just collect more pieces for your pipeline. So all things to consider. Tony, to your point, we will probably talk plenty about the draft as we progress forward. Tony, we'll just touch on some quick topics here before we get to our normal segments. Roster moves. For those that maybe didn't see, Renzel and Korchinski were officially called up during this break. They were called up about this time last week to join the team and practice. We've seen Korchinski kind of serving as like the 7th defenseman right now, so unclear exactly when he's going to fit in immediately, but it seems like Renzel's going to pretty much step right back into the lineup now that he's back with the team. I don't foresee either one of them returning to Rockford the rest of the season. So that will be something to keep an eye on. And the Hawks also signed a little bit of goalie depth. Olivier Rodrigue joined the organization just a few days ago. He had 2 NHL games in Edmonton last season. He has 131 career AHL games. So again, just some goaltending depth to add to this pipeline, to supplement with Camesso, with Weeks, Flores, who came up and has done a brilliant job down in Rockford as well. The Hawks goaltending pipeline looking pretty good lately when it's all said and done. And now they just get a little bit of insurance for the rest of the season as well. We've touched on some of the trade rumors with Murphy and Dickinson. But one other note to add, Tony, is trades got to start happening pretty much as soon as the trade freeze lifts here in the coming days. Pretty much every insider has said expect a lot of action leading up.
There'll be movement.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of movement. I don't think we're going to have to wait till March 6th to get a lot of movement. Obviously, the Seth Jones trade from a year ago happened 6 days before the trade deadline. So probably over this coming weekend and into early next week, we're going to see a lot of action around the NHL as teams start to load up for the back half of this season. So something to keep an eye on. And Tony, some really good news. Wyatt Kaiser should start skating in the coming days, according to head coach Jeff Blashill.
Tony, that is great news. That's great news. Yes.
Huge bullet dodged that he's not A, going to miss the rest of the season, but B, not going to miss extended time, because we talked about it in the wake of that injury. It did not look good. It looked very, very bad. We were fearing the worst when it came to a potential knee injury, but he's okay. And again, Blashill hasn't ruled out that he could join the team on this 4-game road trip. But I think it's probably safe to assume we'll see him once the Hawks return to the United Center in a little bit over a week and a half here when it's all said and done. But even then, that's still incredible news if that ends up being the case. And of course, we mentioned the standings update already. 10 points out of that playoff spot and 11 points out of the basement. Tony, anything to add there before we get into our segments here?
No, I was told that you were going to ruffle some feathers, Ron.
you were told correctly. So let's get into it.
It's time to ruffle some feathers.
Oh, Tony, I know you said you don't have any feathers to ruffle, so I think I'll ruffle enough feathers for the both of us here tonight.
Go for it, Ronald.
Tony, there was reports out today via Ben Pope that the Blackhawks have quote unquote more or less come around on Gavin McKenna. He's a little bit. They're encouraged by his development in his overall two-way game. They're encouraged that he's starting to show a little bit more defensive prowess. He's playing a little bit better in terms of the physicality and how to handle older players. And he's been on a tear since coming off the World Juniors, 25 points in 12 games, and that's really shot him up the NCAA rankings in terms of scoring. So I think there's a lot of Blackhawks fans that are like, yes, the Hawks would pick him if they get the chance. I'm going to ruffle feathers and say people needed to slow the fuck down when the reports originally came out that the Hawks weren't potentially interested in him. And there was also some wordplay that I think a lot of people missed. Originally, it was the Hawks didn't have him as their number one player in the draft. It didn't mean they didn't like him. Didn't mean that he wasn't 2 or 3 or even 4. It just meant this is a really good draft. And there were players that they thought were closer to where they wanted them to be. Tony, for example, they like players that are all-around players, right? Guys that have that defensive prowess. That's, I think, a big reason why they like a player like Sasha Boisvert. I think that's another reason why they like a player like Marek Vanacker. These are guys that have a little bit of that two-way game. They've got some nastiness, more so Vanacker than Boisvert. They want those guys. They don't want guys that are just one-trick ponies, that are just going to come up and not be able to develop the other part of their game. And I think it's okay that the Hawks had some reserves on McKenna. He's a great player, but he's 170 pounds. He's small. And yes, have we seen small players that were?
Yeah, you want to put that knock on them. That's a good knock to put on him right now.
Yeah. Have we seen those guys come into the league and do well? Yeah, we saw it with Patrick Kane. That was a big knock on Patrick Kane coming out of the draft. The talent is there. There's no question about that with McKenna. And I'm not saying he's not a good player, and I'm not saying that the Hawks shouldn't be interested in him. But I think everybody that got their panties in a bunch when the Hawks essentially said that McKenna wasn't their number one player in this year's draft needed to pump the brakes. And I got some research to back that, Tony. We like numbers around here, as we all know. And I got some research because I was sitting here thinking to myself, and I said, what would like an ideal college level player look like if they're going toward the top of their draft? And I was like, well, let me cite a pair of really good guys that came out of the NCAA that are now in the NHL and are very good hockey players. One much younger than another, but nonetheless, Gavin McKenna, as it stands today, has 43 points in 28 games. That's pretty good, but the college season as a whole has already played about 30 games. They play 38. So he's only got about 8 games left before they get into their, the Big Ten tournament. And then, of course, if they move on to the 4x4, et cetera. But in 38 games, he'll be at 36 game pace because he missed those 2 games. Right now, he's on pace for 55 points. Now, obviously, take account in his hot streak. He has 25 and 12 since then, including an 8-point game along the way. So let's say maybe that number pushes closer to 60. Macklin Celebrini had 64 points in 38 games as a college freshman. Jack Eichel had 70 points in 38 games coming out of Boston College when he was the number 2 overall pick behind Connor McDavid. I think there was some reserves early in the season before McKenna picked it up because they were saying, well, he's jumped to a higher level of competition than the juniors. He's struggled a little bit offensively, which is his calling card, right? If you're not gonna be great at everything else, you got to be really good at what you're really good at, and he wasn't showing that early in the year. And there was rumors and worries about his work ethic and how much he would be a contributor on defense. Not necessarily in the sense of like he's going to be elite, but in the sense of, he's going to be at least willing, right, to back check and to forecheck and have that kind of the prowess in his game. So I think it's okay that the Hawks felt that way, especially when you look at Ivar Stenberg and how good he is already in a two-way game, playing against grown-ass men in Sweden at 18 years old. And you look at players like Keaton Verhoff, who is having a really good collegiate season for North Dakota right now and is 6'4" and 212 pounds as an 18-year-old. So I think the fact that the Hawks have come around is great because I think that's also a testament to Gavin McKenna. But I think the people that were getting their panties in a bunch over the Hawks don't think McKenna's the number one player in the draft just need to relax. Because I don't think that's that crazy of a statement. This is a really good draft. And it's okay. And let's be completely fucking realistic here. The Hawks probably aren't going to get a shot at McKenna anyway, unless they get really fucking lucky. So we might be all getting upset and worried about shit for him to not even be able to be a Blackhawk anyway, when it's all said and done. So it's just something to keep an eye on. Again, I'm not here to poo-poo McKenna. I know I've fired up the comment section. I can see the ticks running around. But I just think the overreaction of, oh, Kyle Davidson doesn't think he's a good hockey player was, first off, false. And second off, a little misunderstood when it's all said and done.
I disagree with this wholeheartedly. And you've ruffled my feathers. I think the reason you read that report is because this front office doesn't want anybody who's going to come in here and be a PR nightmare. And they were worried that once the felony charges were brought on the kid, obviously they fell apart. But I just think that they planted that out there at the right time to try and say, we don't expect us to draft this kid if we do wind up in that position. And now that the dust has settled and we're in the Olympic break, you get this, oh, now we like what he's doing. He's growing up our board. I think the reason people reacted like this is because this team desperately needs another high-end talented scorer. We've done the whole let's draft Artem Levshunov instead of the elite offensive upside guy. We've done the back into the first round and go get Mason West. We've got all the guys that can figure out, the two-way game, the Kyle Davidson ideal player. Where is the offensive upside superstar to play alongside Connor Bedard? I don't care if he doesn't play defense. I don't care if he's small. I want someone who can come in here and score 45, 50 goal potential and help this team out. You passed on so many opportunities to bring in that player so far, and they still have refused to do it. And I think that it was sort of a slap in everyone's face when they went out and said, well, we don't want Gavin McKenna, or he's not high on our draft board, which is, I think there were some wordplay there. It didn't mean that he was not on their draft board. I agree with that. But I want that offensive upside guy. And I feel like Gavin McKenna could be a potential one of those versus, let's go off and draft another defenseman because the Artem Levshunov and Kevin Korchinski project isn't working.
I do agree here, though, with Lebowski as well. He's like, I'd like McKenna to score more goals, though. He says he's not scoring 45 in the NHL. I kind of agree with that. He's only got 13 goals in college right now. Most of his points come via assists. Now, granted, that probably helps Connor Bedard because then Connor Bedard can become a shooter. And McKenna, despite being, I think he's technically listed as a center in college, he's going to play the wing in the NHL. I think most people have just kind of expected that at this point. So you can get by with it, right? Again, this is also assuming the Hawks even have the opportunity to draft him.
True. You got to bless. You got to,
you gotta be
take
real
care
nice
of your
to
ping pong balls.
Ping pong balls for the next 6 months, or not even 4 months, or whatever the fuck it is. Because do we even know if he's even going to be there? Like that's my entire point of this. We're all getting fucking pissed off about their feelings of Gavin McKenna when Gavin McKenna's not even probably going to be on the fucking board when they draft anyway. So why are we getting our panties in a bunch?
Are you assuming that this team is not picking in the top 5?
100%.
Okay.
They're already at the 7th spot by draft odds, or 6th. And the teams that are below them aren't getting any better.
You're going to sell off some assets. Not that,
are Jason Dickinson and Connor Murphy really going to change a whole lot? Maybe a little, but
not much.
not enough, I think, to plummet them down the rankings. Again, you're 11 points clear of Vancouver right now, and Vancouver is going to get rid of probably more quality assets than the Blackhawks are going to. Now, again, I'm not saying that they're not going to have a chance. But even if this team's picking 5 or even 4, Gavin
Cowboy
McKenna's
says
not getting on
that
the
both
top
those
list.
guys are your PK1. That could really hurt.
It could hurt, sure. But again, who knows? You also got to pray that the teams that are below you play better than you do down the stretch. And then the ping pong ball's got to go your way. Because guess what? The Hawks have already gotten a lot of luck from ping pong balls over the last couple of years. So who's to say that they're going to get it
nothing?
again?
There's nothing to say that we won't get lucky again, though.
Of course, there's nothing to say that we won't. But the odds speak that they won't. And Gavin McKenna's probably going in the top 2. I fully expect the first 2 picks of the draft to be him and Stenberg. With probably one of the defensemen, either Verhoff or the kid that just balled out for Latvia. I think it's Schmitz at the Olympics, probably going 3. That's what I would expect. So I'm just saying. We're probably not even going to chance to see him in a Blackhawks uniform. So there's absolutely,
when they win that draft lottery, Ron,
I'll happily eat my words. I'll happily eat my words.
I know.
I am the king of hoping I'm wrong when I'm negative. I want to be wrong. But I think getting flustered about this in February is just stupid. That's just my personal opinion on the matter. But that's
if they were playing hockey games, I think it'd be easier to get frustrated about something else. But people need something to be frustrated about.
Of course, because everybody wants to be mad online, Tony.
Yes, mad online.
Everybody wants
Twitter.com.
Twitter.com. It's a beautiful place. Tony, let's turn the negatives into some positives here, shall we?
Yep.
Time to give out some stick taps.
Stick taps, Tone. I know you mentioned you coming in. You really didn't have any to give out, so I'll give out one in case of you think of another.
Well, I mean, there's an obvious one.
There's an obvious one, and that's where we kind of went with tonight. It's hard when there's no Blackhawks really hockey being played or any, I guess, positive news. There really just is no news. It's kind of just where the state of this team is right now. But stick taps to Team USA. Absolutely electric. Connor Hellebuck was spectacular. Again, they battled, they fought their way back, and when it mattered most, they made a play when you needed it and took care of business and have accomplished something. Tony, this is the thing that I thought was the most spectacular about just like what accumulated here in 2026. Hockey began as an Olympic sport back in 1920. It's a long time ago. It was actually in the Summer Olympics, too, when it first debuted. The U.S. coming into this Olympics had only won 2 gold medals in hockey ever since 1920. Tony, you and I rooted for baseball teams that prior to their most recent championships had not won anything in over 75 years. So we kind of knew what these kind of droughts looked like.
Yeah.
1960 was the first U.S. gold medal in men's Olympic hockey. And then, of course, 1980 was the spectacular gold medal win as well. This is just the 3rd gold medal in men's hockey since 1920, in over 100 years. So it's pretty fucking cool to see what the U.S. did in the Olympics. Again, Canada was going for their 10th, I believe, gold medal in men's hockey in Olympic history. Pretty crazy stuff. And the U.S. took care of business and accomplished that, geting there first.
Yes,
so
they did.
That was awesome. Worthy of another stick tap, even though we spent the opening portion of our show discussing that a little bit, but was worth bringing it back around to kind of begin closing things out. And for what it's worth, just because of timing and everything, we appreciate the hell out of everybody in the comment section here tonight. I'm glad you guys blew it up. I'm glad the McKenna discussion generated some noise as well. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I really do. Genuinely. But again, big shout out to everybody. Lebowski, Blackhawks Cowboy, Jason Vahurs, who was in here a little bit earlier saying Hawks and Sharks in the Western Conference Final in 2029. That would be a lot of fun. And of course, Anthony, Tony, and all the others that chipped in, and as well as our good friend, Mr. Kirk as well, earlier on in the show chiming in. So appreciate everybody jumping in the comment section tonight. Tone, do you have another stick tap for us, or should we look ahead to what's on tap next?
Let's take a look at what's on tap. I again, stick tap Team USA, incredible game. One of the best hockey games I think I've ever witnessed. Just incredible stuff, and best hockey country in the world, right here, United States of America. Love it, Ron.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? And again, shout out to the ladies too. Got to watch that whole game as well. The way they persevered and brought it back and won gold was pretty fucking cool. So just awesome stuff all around from USA Hockey in this Olympics. What is on tap next, Tone? Well, it's an upcoming slate. We'll look at the next 5 just because we want to include a game at the United Center in this, but it's 4 road games on the horizon here for the Blackhawks as they resume play coming out of the Olympic break. The first game will be this week. It is Thursday, February 26th. They will be in Nashville. That's a 7:00 Central Time start. All of these games are on CHSN as well. So no games on any national networks for at least the foreseeable future. I think there's a couple in March, but probably closer to the middle of the month, if I remember correctly. Then on Saturday, they're in Colorado as they work their way west. That is on Saturday, February 28th. That's a 5:00 start. So a little bit of early hockey on a Saturday. So as you start to settle in, get all your shopping and things done, you can settle in and watch some Hawks hockey around dinner time. And then on Sunday, it's a back-to-back. March 1st, they're at Utah. That's another early game. It's a 3:00 start in Utah. That's also, again,
Ugly
on
start
CHSN.
times.
Yeah, some crazy start times here. But things return to normal, though, as we persist further into the month of March. Tuesday, March 3rd, they're in Winnipeg. That's a 7:00 start time on CHSN. And then, of course, as we noted, Friday, March 6th, which is the trade deadline day, they will play Vancouver at the United Center for a 7:30 start time, and that'll be on CHSN. A game that the Hawks should win. Vancouver's pretty bad. They're probably going to be even worse after the trade deadline comes and goes on that day or even before then. So hopefully a very winnable hockey game and some fun Friday night hockey at the United Center. Tony, I know we have tickets to that game. Perhaps it's a trade center and then a party at the UC kind of day. I mean, that might
Maybe
on the horizon here. So
might have to put some discussion and thought into that.
might have to. We might have to. And you heard it here first. So be on the lookout for all that good fun coming up here over really not even the next 2 weeks. We're under 2 weeks away from the NHL trade deadline. As always, we appreciate everybody tuning in. If you haven't already, head over to YouTube, head over to On Tap Sportsnet, like, subscribe, hit that bell button, and you'll know when all of our great shows, including Four Feathers Podcasts, go live here on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course on X. Be sure to follow along with us on all socials at Four Feathers Pod and at On Tap Sportsnet. And of course, head over to ontapsportsnet.com and get your big news and analyses for all your favorite Chicago sports teams, because you can check out there what's on tap in Chicago sports. Tony, it felt good to get back on the mic. It's been a hot minute. We're getting geared up for some Blackhawks hockey returning this week. The Olympics were a shit ton of fun, and we can't wait to see what happens over the final 25 here in the regular season. What are you watching for here? That's our closing thought storyline. Leave a comment over on the YouTube, or leave a comment wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and we hope to give you that 5-star rating as well. Tone, what do you say? We get out of here the only way, and let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.